I was 14 years old when I had to live with my grandparents. I had to live with them because my sister was in college and my parents were divorced. They lived in this old bungalow type house. It was one story and we had to have stairs that immediately goes up to the attic. An attic which no one really uses, we just put stuff up there. It's really just too hot and stuffy up there. The sole window there didn't really help. The attic had old creaky wooden floors that I used to have to polish with a coconut shell, because that's how we do it here in the Philippines. That and my grandparents are very traditional. Anyways, my dorm room was near these stairs leading up to the attic. Like, you open my door and then face right and the stairs would be immediately right there. I hated that every time I left my room because I would expect that something would be immediately crawling down from the attic. One night, my grandparents had to pick up my aunt's family from the airport, but because of the horrible traffic here, they had to leave at 7 p.m. And their expected arrival back home would be at the most 5 a.m. So a 14-year-old girl would be alone at home the whole time. I told them that I would be safe here. We lived in a gated community. We had tons of guard dogs. Everything would be okay. Or so I thought. Before they left, we already had dinner, so I was stuck with cleaning the dishes and all. As I was doing that, I could hear a bunch of neighboring dogs barking a lot. I didn't really think much of it, because the dogs always do that. When I finished cleaning up from dinner, I immediately went and locked every door and window, and I turned off the lights before heading to bed. When I entered my room, the lights were open and it looked normal. My anime posters were on the wall, my closet wasn't touched. My bed was next to my barred, tinted windows. We had to tint them because I was on the first floor and my grandparents wanted to make sure that nobody would peek into my room. They were barred too because my uncle, who used to use the room, always escaped through there to go to parties. And this was my grandparents' solution to that. Nothing was out of place to alarm me. Everything was normal. Until I turned off the lights. As soon as I did that, a silhouette of a man was illuminated by the streetlights outside. He looked like he had thick curly hair and a skinny build. I thought I was having hallucinations. And so I turned the lights on again and he was gone. I turned him off again and he was back. Turned on, gone. Turned off, gone. I sighed in relief. I was just tricking myself, I guess. Or something else was cast in the shadow. I double-locked my door just to be safe. One with the doorknob lock and one of those door latches type locks. And then I tucked myself in. It was hard to fall asleep when a lot of the dogs were barking outside. They weren't our dogs, but our neighbors. But I was finally falling asleep when I heard something from above me moving. Something in the attic. I pushed down the thought, I'm tricking myself again. I hugged my pillow. It's just rats, I said to myself. These rats seemed heavy and were also pushing furniture around. My heart sank when I heard them hurriedly go down the stairs and stop at the bottom. I covered myself in my blanket and I waited for something. I was also wishing that my parents had given me a phone at the time like this, but I only waited in bated breath. Suddenly, I heard my doorknob being gently fiddled. I wanted to vomit when I heard a click, followed by a quiet turn of the knob. The knob turned, but it didn't budge. When they noticed, they tried to push it. This time, I had finally stood up. Shaking. I was a kid home alone with no phone, no means of defense. All that was saving me was this thick door from the old days. I softly pushed my body up against the door and locked everything up again. I didn't want to make a sound. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want him to know where I was. I don't know why he stopped, but he did. I didn't go back to bed. I just sat there at the door waiting. It felt like forever. I heard footsteps go up the stairs, but I still sat there. I saw something move in the corner of my eye, there, out of the window. The shadow was back. I forced myself not to look. All I could think of was, thank God that they were barred. I don't remember what happened next. I think I fell asleep or I was too scared to even think straight. I just remember the next day when my family and I were finally having breakfast. I casually brought it up to them. Grandfather, I think I heard footsteps up in the attic last night. My grandmother scoffed. It's probably rats. I never brought it up again. I didn't want them to worry. I probably was. But I do know this. Our dogs were caged up near the gate and were far away from my room, so they wouldn't have seen anything. The only dogs who were near my room were the neighbors. Also, there was nothing outside my window that could cast a shadow that looked like a man. And lastly, the attic window was open. I really don't think that it was rats. I still feel sick to my stomach, and I am honestly so freaked out right now. I have every light on in the house. Anyways, here it goes. I volunteered for a 24/7 wildlife rescue service here in Australia that mostly amounts to picking up orphaned joeys from the side of the road, catching sick wallabies and roos, getting possums out of fireplaces, and others ranging from very challenging to the basic. Now, I don't drive, so I only do rescues in my area or relatively nearby suburbs. I live a block away from a wildlife reserve that has a problem with toxoplasmosis, a parasite that is basically deadly to most macropods, animals with pouches and marsupials. So, when there was a call out at 9 p.m. in the reserve right next to me for a medium-sized wallaby with toxo, I had been bored all day on my day off and went, heck, why not? I got my rescue tub, which contained my essentials, a Hessinger bag, ties, gloves, and head torch, and I went on my way. The couple that called in the room were at the entrance of the trail, and they told me where it was. I knew them too. Our dogs like to play together, and I was easily able to understand what part of the track they were talking about, and I trusted them. They offered to come with me, but it was cold and late, and I didn't want to stress the little guy out by having so many people around it. So I politely said no and that I got this. My area is very safe and I've had no problems walking out late at night or in the dark. So I walked the 30 minutes up the hill into the reserve and I found the poor wallaby. He was so lethargic and didn't bother to move when I went right up to him. Now, he was a very large wallaby, definitely not a medium, and probably weighed around 45 kilos more than half my own body weight. I normally wouldn't do these rescues because I know it pushes my physical capabilities, so I gently maneuver him into the sack I had in my tub, tie it such with some cable ties and pop him in the tub. Now, having grown up in the area and in the Australian bush, I am very used to the sounds of the animals in the night, the scratching, movements, hissing, growling, etc. And since I had my head torch on the entire time, I could see where my feet were going. I was fine. You develop a sort of sixth sense by doing this. I knew the sounds so well. I was a nighttime bush tour guide a few years before I got sick. And when I get a hair-raising feeling on the back of my neck, I know something isn't right. And as sure, every hair in my body seemed to stand on end, and I'm on the balls of my feet. I scan the surrounding area, thinking that it might be a snake or a lost dog or something. Nothing. Confused but still trusting my gut, I slowly start to travel back down the trail. The wallaby is so heavy that I have to stop every few meters and put it down, to stop the tub from cutting into my hands. And then, there is a large crack and movement to my rear left. I spin around and start internally freaking out. That was no animal sound I knew. It had to be a person. It was way too big, and there was a sudden silence, like whatever had made the noise had stopped or was stalking. I decided to just screw it, and pulling on my gloves, hoisted the wallaby over my back, turned off my light, and started booking it down the trail, sticking to the right side just along the edge of the trees, leaving my tub behind. I doubt anybody would take it, and honestly, I was freaking out so much that I couldn't care. Luckily, it was mostly downhill, so I got out there in maybe 20 minutes or so. Every now and then, I could hear a distinctive rustle or crunching of dead bark on the ground that was way too big for any animal in my area, let alone one that would follow a human. The entire time, my instincts are yelling at me to run, run, run. I was gripping the bag over my shoulder for dear life, and I didn't even stop when my shoulder was screaming to stop and rest. I made it out and down several streets, well into the tight-knit neighborhood and into the light before I freaking dared to stop. I couldn't bring myself to look over my shoulder. I could feel someone watching me. I started to cry as I made my way home only a few streets away. I told my mom and she looked very worried and lightly scolded me for going out like that, even though we have both done this kind of thing before. I called up my best friend and she came over for the night and to come with me to try and find my rescue tub with me the next day. This morning, another rescuer came by to take the sick Roo to the vet, and me and Risa went back up to the bush, and we found it. The heavy-duty plastic tub had been smashed up, like someone kept jumping on it. It was half intact. There were butts of what I could only assume were rolled cigarettes and a needle empty on the ground. I just silently picked up the broken tub and threw it away when I got home. I don't think that I'll be going out at night for a long time. To whoever or whatever was stalking me in the bush last night, let's not meet, ever. To first start off, I live in a little city in SoCal with my roommate, who happens to be my cousin. During the pandemic, however, I've been staying with my parents who live in a very small town in NorCal. Because of my time in SoCal, I really do not like staying in NorCal and I would rather live back to my apartment. The reason why I haven't done it is because my parents might think that I will get very lonely there since everything is closed down, and my roommate isn't there as he's with his parents as well. However, since I had to go back for a specific reason, my parents wanted me to take my dog there, Mocha, so I wouldn't feel as lonely staying there. I loved her so I didn't mind one bit. Mocha is a small, pomshy dog that loves to play around me and is usually by my side for most of the time. She also loves to go for runs with me, so I occasionally do take her on jogs. On a Wednesday night, I decided to go running with her. Whenever I go on any runs, I go at night because that's the time I am most energetic. And all the times I went running at night, I never had any type of encounters or occurrences. I put Mocha on a leash and off we went. About 20 minutes into our run, I was running through this creek where there was a park next to it and a bunch of trees surrounding it, houses to the other side. The trail was pretty narrow and the street lamps were pretty dim, but still bright enough to see up ahead. As I'm running with music playing, my leash was tugged by Mocha. This usually happens when she wants to go to the bathroom, so I stopped to let her do her thing. But when I turned around, she was in her alert stance looking straight behind where we had ran. I just assumed that she had heard a squirrel or some other small animal, as she usually does this when she sees one. I was tugging her leash telling her, "Let's go, there's nothing there." She didn't oblige at first. She just kept looking behind us. It took me about 4 or 5 tugs before she finally came to me. I resumed playing my music and we both went off running. I was almost out of the creek and then I would meet a narrow sidewalk that was straight ahead. The trail only had to take a few more short turns. Probably a minute or two later, Mocha tugged the leash again and went on her alert stance behind us. She did an aggressive bark and started growling. I stopped and was looking all around behind us. I was kind of freaked out because the trail had a couple turns and curves. This meant that something was most likely following us. My first guess was a lost dog, which was unsettling because Mocha is tiny. If it was a big dog, it could easily overpower her. As I was looking around the dim area, for a split second, I got a black humanoid figure about 15 yards away from me, right behind a bush next to a tree. I immediately turned my eyes to the opposite direction, and pretending that I did not see him, but boy was my heart pounding. I didn't see any figures or his face. I just saw the outline of his upper body. I didn't have any weapons on me as a self-defense. If this guy is following me, my best solution is to run off without him trying to catch me. I tried to play it cool and I told Mocha, let's go. The trail was going to end. I just had to make it a turn and it would be a straight sidewalk that was about 300 or 400 yards. There are fences on both sides of the sidewalk, so the only solution was to keep running forward. I went as a jog right as I turned the corner, and made sure that I was out of view from the person I went on a full sprint as quietly as I could. The sidewalk was ahead of me, so I made sure to just keep on running. I kept looking behind me to see if I was really being followed. About being 70 yards away, I saw a person come into view from the turn, and then went sprinting as fast as he could towards me. As if I wasn't sprinting, I went and sprinted as fast as I could. I've never ran so fast in my life. Looking back, I'm amazed how quick I actually was. Mocha was keeping up with me about 100 yards of me sprinting. I looked back. The guy was still running behind me. He had a dark hoodie on, sweatpants, and appeared to be 6 feet tall. He was still in the same distance that I noticed him, which means that he was pretty fast as well. The sidewalk was going to end in about 100 yards and it would lead into my neighborhood. I could lose him in there. I was slowly getting out of breath. My adrenaline was beginning to die down. I kept sprinting, hoping that I wouldn't get too tired too quick. Another 100 yards of me sprinting, I finally made it to my neighborhood out of breath. This neighborhood was pretty broad, so if I were to keep running, this person would have spotted me right away, and at the pace that he was running, it didn't seem like a good idea. My best solution was to hide. I went straight to a random house and jumped over to their backyard, where I would be kept hidden behind the fence. I basically threw Mocha over and myself. We were both panting, but I tried to keep quiet as I heard footsteps coming by. The guy had finished the trail and was now in the neighborhood. He stopped running, and I heard him panting. I was hearing him mutter as he was out of breath. He kept saying, "Crap, what the heck?" I was holding Mocha, scratching her so she wouldn't bark or growl. About 5 minutes later, I heard footsteps walking away and then slowly fading. I waited about 10 minutes in complete silence to be sure that he wasn't close by. I peeked my head around the fence and I was all alone now. I got Mocha and went to the opposite direction from where I had heard the guy go. Even though I was tired, I tried to jog just so I could get home sooner. I kept looking around me. I was very paranoid that the guy would be there somewhere. I made it back home with no problem, and I've gotta thank Mocha for pretty much telling me that someone was behind me and stalking us. I don't know how long he was following us or what he was planning on doing. I just hope that he didn't get a clear glimpse of my face because I don't want to run up on him again.